Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tactical Insight Show. First time in a while that Graham and I are sitting here not talking about 3 points. Actually, Man United was the only time we dropped points this season. It was a defeat. Okay, we've not lost against Southampton, but it's 2 drop points. It is a draw, our first draw since January, and we've got to break down a little bit why. Graham, it's a shame. I think we could easily be sitting here talking about a win, but then I think Southampton were more than worthy of a draw. We've got to break this down, but how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, mate. I've had a really good week, actually, apart from the result. You're into your tennis, aren't you?
I am into my tennis, yes.
Are you into your golf?
Not so much. My family are. They play a lot. Yeah, why did you ask?
Well, I was really lucky last week. I got invited to a golf charity day at a well-known Kent golf course. I haven't played golf for a while, but went along to take part in the charity day. On the first green, drove me a tee shot, literally 200 yards straight down the middle of the fairway.
Okay, well done.
Got down to the middle of the fairway, turned to me caddy, said, look, I want to chip it onto the green. Can you give me a small club? He goes, here, have the Tottenham.
No, hold on. Did he actually say that?
Which is weird, really, because I wanted to go forwards, not backwards. But the motto to the story is...
I thought, how's he starting this show with he's telling me about his golf. There we go.
The motto to the story to any golfer is never ask your caddy for a small club because they'll always give you the Tottenham.
Well, there you go. And they lost. And actually, weirdly, despite our draw, at the end of this whole week of football, because of course we played Europa League action on Thursday, there was football on Tuesday and Wednesday night in the Premier League. It's actually, if you're talking about the race for top 4, I appreciate some people's aspirations are beyond that and they're talking about title races. And that's fantastic because we're still 2 points clear of City. But if you're looking at the race we expect to be in for most of the season, which is battling for that Champions League spot, we have actually made ground on Tottenham, Liverpool, and kept pace with Chelsea and United.
Yeah, I slightly disagree with you. I think it feels to me like an opportunity missed.
Well, I mean, it is.
It is,
but it's just a fact that ultimately...
I agree with you there. But when you think it, you look at it. Man City obviously got the result we expected, but Liverpool lost, Tottenham lost, Chelsea and Man United drew. So this was a great opportunity to go to St Mary's and get a win, and go back 4 points clear. And Southampton went into that game without their best ball carrying right fullback, Kyle Walker-Peters, and also their most gifted centre-back, Bella Kotchap. Yeah. And so literally Southampton had to literally rejig the whole of their defence. I think this result, Arsenal's first draw in 27 games, had been coming, James. It had been coming over the last week. We've noticed at Leeds last week the drop-off in the second half where we really, I thought, were fortunate to win the game. It was only Leeds' wastefulness that enabled us to win that one. And then in the week against PSV, we were wasteful in front of goal.
Yeah.
We had something like 25 shots, an XG of 2.3, and only won the game 1-0. So the fact that we were struggling in the second half against Leeds and the fact that we were wasteful in the against PSV all came to the fore in this game at Southampton, where we dominated the first half and didn't take our chances, and then we dropped off in the second half with our intensity, allowed Southampton back into the game. I think my view on it is that we played 7 games in 22 days, and I think 8 of those players have played in all 15 games, or had a part in all of those 15 games this season. That is the reason I think that the tiredness and fatigue was showing itself yesterday at Southampton and ultimately contributed to drop points.
Is that really an excuse, though? I know you're not necessarily presenting it as an excuse, but you know, we see the teams that did get in the top 4 last season are having to put out, pretty much their first 11 against much tougher opposition. That's no disrespect to the Europa League sides that we're facing, that's just a fact. You've got Man United who have had to go quite strong in the Europa League as well. So why is it just a factor for us? It's a factor for everyone, isn't it?
Well, it is a factor. I think what you're seeing at the moment as we build up to this World Cup is that the Champions League teams have even a harder schedule than we've got, to be fair. But Europa League teams are also struggling with the amount of fixtures now have to be played in such a confined window, such a small space of time. So teams like Newcastle benefited at Tottenham yesterday, for example, and Southampton would have benefited against us. So it is getting harder. I think also the limitations in our squad are starting to reveal itself. We haven't got the depth in the squad that I think we need for this sort of tough programme. Me and you talked pre-season about what we wanted to do for this season. I said we needed another attacker. I also said we needed another midfielder. We didn't get those players, although he has spent £250 million over 2 years to assemble the players he's got. I still think that we're short, and it was reflected on the bench yesterday. And I think this is why we're struggling. players, he said about Saka, he needs him to play in all these games. And Saka was good again yesterday, but I just think it's asking a lot of players to continually, every 3 days, play at the level that they have to play at. Remember, Arsenal technically play technically good football with pass and move, and it demands a lot intensity-wise, and I think we're seeing a drop-off as a result of the number of games. And I think it's reflected yesterday in Thomas Partey's performance. Really superb in the first half, dominating. Second half, he really did struggle and was running out of legs.
All right, let's have a look at the match stats for today then, or for the game yesterday even. 60% possession we had to Southampton's 40%, 12 shots to their 10, 3 on target each, 9 open play shots to their 6. We look at the attacking zones. We had more final third entries, nearly double actually, 66 to their 30, 34 deep touches to their 22, 21 zone 14 touches to their 11, and a field tilt of 62% to 38%. You actually did discuss the field tilt last week, Graham. Anything you want to touch on with those attacking stats?
I think that the stats there show that Arsenal were dominating pretty much in most of those numbers. And I think, to be honest, most of those numbers come from the first half. We're going to show a graphic that shows the difference between the action areas in the first half to how it unfolded at the end of the game. I think in the first half we were totally dominant, and a lot of those numbers would have been beefed up by the fact that we were so dominant in that first half. I think that we were clearly dominating the game in the action areas up high, and we created a lot of chances which we didn't take. Had we been more ruthless, we would have won the game, there's no doubt about that. So, no, for me, the numbers reflect, overall though, Arsenal were more dominant in the game. Yeah,
agreed. Defensive stats, 17 Arsenal tackles to Southampton's 35 interceptions, 4 blocked passes to their 3 and 9, and 10.3 passes per defensive action to their 23.4, so quite a big difference there. I want to have a little look at the goal we scored, because you mentioned how good that first half was, and before we get into the differences between the halves and what they changed, I do think we've got to give some real credit to Granit Xhaka and the team for this goal, because it's really well worked. Starts with Ben White, who's got the ball. He's received it from Partey at this point, rolls it into Saka, who just gives it back into White. White drives into the penalty area, and it's a lovely cutback into Granit Xhaka. And what a goal. Very, very similar to the goal he scored earlier in the week against PSV. It's Tomiyasu who's got forward. He's not just fired it across goal, he's actually cut it slightly back, and he's picked out Xhaka with his right foot, has buried it. But if we just go through it one more time, again, you talk about the 5 lanes. We can see them there. How many times on this show have you talked about 5 lanes in terms of our shape? But this time White decides to, he's done this a few times this season, is actually kind of break the pattern, running beyond Saka, because Saka's come inside, he's still hugging the touchline, but just a little bit to leave enough room for White to overlap. And then at this point, Granit Xhaka, who started sort of quite wide, sort of centre left, has actually darted towards that edge of the penalty area where Diallo and Ward-Prowse aren't getting back quickly enough. The back 4 are just racing towards goal to stop Jesus. Martinelli's at the back post, and then Xhaka finds that nice pocket of space, so when it comes to him, he's got time to bury it. It's an absolutely brilliant finish, but it's a pattern, it's a plan. We saw it earlier in the week, and they've done it again today. Ben White overlapping is, that's not a surprise. We've seen goals like this against Bournemouth as well. We've seen great attacking play against Liverpool and Tottenham in very similar ways, and it's all still coming to fruition again.
I think Ben White's role in that goal shouldn't be underestimated. It is a brilliant move. Saka backhills him in, but he picks out Xhaka with a perfect ball. Xhaka, great technique to bury that. He hadn't scored with his right foot for 7 years at Arsenal.
Wow.
He's now scored 2 in a week.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely immense yesterday. I know we're going to talk about his numbers. A well-worked goal, James.
Yeah, his numbers, as you mentioned, you sent these through to me. I'll let you do the honours and have a little read of them. Yeah,
I think the one thing that struck me yesterday was that he actually run more than any Arsenal player on the pitch.
Yeah.
So if you look at his numbers there, 90% pass accuracy, he actually had 73 touches, 3 key passes, 4 ground duels, 1, 2 shots on target and 2 clearances and 1 goal. This was a complete performance. What a rejuvenation for Granit Xhaka. And I think, once again yesterday, for me, he was our best player.
He's been our player of the season so far.
I would say so, it's starting to.
Yeah. I think he was immense, and I think he was... Where in other games we've been able to say maybe Granit Xhaka's man of the match, but you could also maybe pick out 2 or 3 others, whether it be Martinelli, Saka, Saliba, whoever it might be. I think Xhaka was the standout and best player out on the pitch yesterday for me.
Yeah, I think he's now adding goals to his game. He's now got 4 in 15 games, James, which equals his best tally at Arsenal. He's had twice before had 4 goals in a league season. The last time he did it was 2018-19. 4 goals already this season and 3 assists. In 15 Arsenal games this season.
Fair play. Really good numbers. Let's have a little look at the shape then, because these are the starting 11s. I know you really want to break this down. They seem to line up in a 4-4-2 to our 4-3-3.
Yeah, I think we took advantage of the way they set up Southampton. He literally set up in this 4-4-2 shape. Arsenal playing their normal 4-3-3 with Partey, Holding and our 2 number 8s either side. And I think the key where we had a lot of success in that first half hour is the way that we played round their midfield too. Because he had real problems, I think, Hassan Hutter on Sunday. Ward, Prowse and Diallo were very easily played round. We had like a diamond in midfield, James, the way we built up. So Partey would have the ball. You had Odegaard on the right-hand side, Xhaka on the left-hand side. And what Jesus was doing was he was dropping into that midfield, creating a 3v there too.
Yeah.
So you had like, the moment Partey got the ball, you got the diamond there, if you show it, with Jesus coming in. And then you've got the 3 there against their 2 in midfield. So when we started to build up through Partey, this is what we were doing quite a lot. And then once we created that sort of like 3v2 overload, we were then using our wide players with our number 8s making very good vertical runs from that, and we were getting our 5 lanes up high once we played round their 2 in midfield.
Yeah. So
they only had like 4 at the back, but what Jesus was doing, he was bringing out one of their centre-backs as well. So one of their centre-backs was following him out.
Kaleta.
Yeah, was often following Jesus out. So that meant an effect that we had, when we were pushing high, we sometimes had 5v3. So we were able to sort of like create lots of openings and get players in very good goal scoring positions. Southampton struggled with that at the start, and I think what he then did, Hassan Hutter, was to stop that happening. He decided then to revert to a back 5, I thought. He said it was a 3-4-3, but I thought it was more a back 5, a 5-4-1, because he wanted 5 defenders to defend against our 5 attackers.
Yeah.
So what he did was, Elanusti moved back to the right wing back, Peru came out onto the left-hand side as left wing back, Bianco, God knows how he stayed on the pitch yesterday, went from right back to right centre back, Salisu was in the middle,
with Kaleta.
There's your 3 centre-backs, there's your 2 wing-backs. And now you've got 5v5. So when we're trying to penetrate now, it's more difficult. He's also now asked Adam Armstrong, who was playing up front, to come back into midfield. So he's now got 4. So now immediately you can see the space that we had before with the diamond, being able to sort of like create space and use our wide players, has virtually disappeared, because what they've done is they've congested the pitch in the middle. They've got their 5 defenders back, and that gave them a foothold in the game, because we were literally creating chance after chance. We should have been more ruthless. We should have put the game out of sight. Jesus had 2 great chances, one from an Odegaard flick I think he really should have buried. Saka was causing problems for them from the right-hand side. Martinelli was making some good runs in from the left. So these sort of like runs from our wingers from out to in, and our number 8s with their vertical running were getting in behind their defence. He now shut this down with this change of formation. I heard Armstrong say, the goal scorer, Stuart Armstrong, say after the game, we went back to a 5 to stop them from playing through us, and decided to play counter-attack where we thought we could give them problems. So that's how the first half played out, and in the end, we only went in 1 goal ahead, as you say, through Xhaka's goal, but that's how they started to stop us from penetrating through their defence first half.
It did feel like in the first half we looked like we had a man more, just constantly overlapping, constantly even underlapping, whether it be Xhaka driving through midfield. They didn't know who was coming and going with what player, who was picking up who. And you're right, once they went to that back 5 in the second half, and it was evident from the very start actually, that tactical switch, they just had more almost man-to-man marking. They were able to just sort of say, listen, this is quite clearly your man, this is quite clearly how you're going to deal with the situation. And suddenly if Martinelli was to get the better of El Yunusi in a situation, or Saka with Pero, they had that little bit more to deal with. It was almost like they acknowledged, we're not going to win this midfield battle, let's just ensure we have enough to stop them doing anything in the final third and be a bit more effective on the counter.
We were building up again in a 3-2-5. I think occasionally it became a 6, so we did try and get Ben White up to create that extra man up high. I think we suffered a bit on our left-hand side. What I've noticed over the last few weeks is Tomiyasu on that left-hand side, he inverts, but he doesn't offer that option up high. I mentioned it last week against Leeds.
Yeah.
He's not able to drive forward and offer us an option out wide. And also that little triangle that was so good early in the season with Zinchenko, Xhaka and Martinelli has been disturbed. So we're not quite getting the same patterns up high. I think, I was talking to you when I came in this morning, I think it's almost like time for Arteta to end this Tomiyasu experiment and maybe put Kieran Tierney on the left side if Zinchenko's not going to be fit. I'm not saying Kieran Tierney can invert as well as what Zinchenko does, but certainly we saw yesterday he was able to get forward a lot and cause them problems even when they had their back five on that left-hand side. So,
well, this was something, you brought it up and I did want to talk about it because I was having some debates with people and they were saying, well, what does it matter ultimately if it's Tomiyasu or Tierney and they're ultimately both inverted and we played so well in the first half, so can you really be that critical about Tomiyasu playing? I feel I always have to say is because people think that when you're sort of taking away from or you're being critical of something that Tomiyasu doesn't offer, you think that you're suddenly criticising the whole player. I think he's one of the best, if not, there's a shout for him being the best defender we have in the squad in terms of the way he deals with his one-to-ones, winning his aerial duels, everything. He's an incredibly complete defender. Going forward, I agree. He doesn't offer as much side of light. Now, what I've got here is his touch map, thanks to WhoScored.com, against Southampton. And I'll be honest, what I was trying to look for was evidence that he didn't get forward as much as both Tierney against Brentford away from home and Zinchenko against Bournemouth away from home. I think all three away games are very comparable in terms of position in the league and how we'd have to play the game, whatever. So that's his touch map there. And again, what do you see? If we highlight a little bit, let's do it in yellow. I suppose you see a main cluster in this area, but again, there's not really too much. And I was thinking we'd see something different when we have a look at Kieran Tierney's, and it's not that different. Okay, maybe in this area there's a little bit more. I think he probably gets into naturally more final third areas a little bit better, so I think there's probably something there. And then I had a little look at Zinchenko's, as I mentioned, against Bournemouth. And again, maybe a little bit more in this area of the pitch than we saw from Tomiyasu, but he kind of goes everywhere. Just look at kind of all these touches here. He kind of goes wherever he wants, doesn't he, Zinchenko? He really is the best in the squad in terms of that inverted role. So again, I'm sitting there looking at these numbers, and not numbers, these touches, this touch map, and I'm thinking, okay, but they're not exactly getting into, let's do it in red, and I'll highlight it. They're not getting into these areas. The fullback areas that didn't highlight as I wanted it to. There we go. Sort of, getting to the byline, whipping it into the box like we've seen Ben White doing. Or again, if I go to Kieran Tierney's, let's go back to his touches against Brentford. Again, in red. There we go. How many times is he really getting into... Oh, why is my tablet doing that? There we go. He's not getting into that area as much as we'd have liked. And I had a little look at Ben White's touch map against Southampton, where you do see a lot more of that. Again, we'll do it in green because he's actually done it. In this area of the pitch, just a lot more touches, stretching the pitch, offering help to Saka. So what's my takeaway from all this? That ultimately, I think it's more instruction than anything, that the inverted left back doesn't get forward as much, that Martinelli does naturally have a lot more work to do on the touchline than Bukayo Saka does on the right. But it leaves me feeling that we're a little bit predictable, and I think the best teams can attack the right as well as they can the left. They can say to the opposition, you know what, don't focus on everything we're doing there because we can switch the ball and punish you just as much on the other side. Now, while Martinelli does a lot of great work down the left, I don't think we're as effective down that side as we are on the right at the moment.
I think you touched on it. The word there is predictability. When you've got two players, you can two fullbacks who can go high and create, like White on the right and maybe Zinchenko or Tierney on the left. Teams do not know which side can't plan for it, and as the game plays out, you've always got the option of going right or left. The other key point I'd make is on the touch map you showed, it's quality, James. It's quality. So you might say that Tierney's touches were very similar to Tomiyasu in that left-hand side going forward, but I think Tierney offers more quality in those areas, and we saw it yesterday when we very nearly scored a winning goal when he broke the lines, got forward, and was very unlucky, just slightly over the line when he pulled it back for Odegaard to put the ball in the net. So I think Tierney would offer us more quality in that area going forward than what Tomiyasu could do. If you look at our three left backs, I think for me, Tomiyasu is definitely the best defender. Zinchenko is definitely great at sort of inverting and helping in our build-up play,
Dominating
midfield.
Yeah.
And then Tierney, his strength is up high, being able to get on the end of movements when Martinelli comes inside, to drive into that space and put crosses into the box. And he's the best attacking of our three fullbacks. Sure. So it's all right to look at the match, and I know we look at stats, we look at maps. Sometimes I think you have to look a little bit further, and I just think on this, what we see,
just the eyes,
what the eyes tells you, the eye test,
true.
and I think that's what you see there.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Let's talk about our first half versus our second half. We're going to break down the Southampton goal in a sec, but you said some great numbers in terms of action areas as well, comparing the first half to the actual full game final numbers. Talk to us through these.
Well, this was amazing when I saw this. The fact is that Southampton only had 7% in our attacking third, which our numbers were. Let me just see it there. I've got to put my glasses on, James.
No, that's all right. Well, 59%.
59% in their attacking third and 34% in the middle. So that tells me in the first half we were totally dominant in their attacking third. But by the end of the game, and it shows how we dropped off in the second half, those numbers had radically changed. Those percentages had dropped massively in the second half to our 59% in their final third had dropped to 32%, and their 7% in our final third had gone up to 23%. That tells me that in the first half, really, we literally had all the ball round their final third and didn't make the most of it, weren't ruthless enough and were wasteful up high. Second half, they wrestled back that percentage and had more, although they didn't create much from open play, but bar their goal, what they did do effectively was they played on the counter, they played for long balls, they played for getting the ball up the pitch, looking for set plays and throw-ins, and got the ball more up into our final third. And I think the tone was set in the second half from a slightly sloppy pass from William Saliba. We seemed to encourage them on a bit. Saliba is normally one of our most calmest, assured passers. And I think in the second half, our passing, our ability to string 10, 15 passes together and create movements up high fell away badly. And that's because I think the players looked tired second half. We couldn't maintain the intensity, and Southampton took advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's so fascinating? I think it's important to make this point. This is the first half numbers versus the full game. It's not the first half versus second half. So you actually got to think how much those numbers swung in Southampton's favour just to pull it back to an even look. I think that's the crucial thing. It's how dominant they must have been in. Not dominant. How much better they were in the second half territorially for those numbers to look fairly even. All areas of the pitch had a sort of fair amount of action seen.
I think that towards the end of the game they were putting us under pressure. So much so that the Southampton manager thought that they
had us on the ropes or something.
He had us on the ropes, he said. He thought they could win it. And it came really through pushing us back. It became a game what Southampton wanted it to be. They didn't want it to be an open game. They didn't want us to play our beautiful passing football. They wanted it to be a scrappy game. They wanted to sort of play off second balls. They wanted to get set plays. They wanted to get up around our box, break the play up, which put us out of our rhythm. And in the end, it became the game that Southampton wanted it to be, and that's why he probably felt that they looked more likely to score. They didn't really, for me, look like they were going to score, because I will credit our centre-halves, Gabriel and Saliba, who didn't have... I thought Gabriel actually played really well.
Every time people said that. I didn't have a great view of especially that second half, where we did more defending.
I thought every time they put a cross into that box, Gabriel headed it out. And I thought we defended their aerial bombardment quite well. The referee allowed them to get away with a lot of over physicality, which we're going to talk about, but when they tried to make it a physical game fairly, I thought we dealt with it really well. Yeah, agreed. Let's just go through these quickly from Opta. Last two games, comparing our first half to our second half. 2 goals to 0, an XG of 1.01 to 0.48. We've had 15 shots to 6. We've had 7 shots on target to 0. 0 shots on target in our last 2 second halves of Premier League football. 26 touches in the box to 13. 103 passes, ending in the final third compared to 70. 4 times possession, won in the final third to 3. And a 0.72 XG against compared to the 1.81 in the second half. 13 shots faced, well, okay, same as the 13 shots faced in the other, but there are 5 on target compared to the 2 in the first half. It shows you that the quality of chances are clearly a bit better. Opposition touches in the Arsenal box, 27 to 13, so more in the second half, and 119 opposition passes, ending in the final third to 43. That's a big difference there.
Yeah, you're right. And something, it bucks the trend of that Tottenham and Liverpool game where we came out in the second half and were much better in those games and started to take control. So something isn't right there. Is it just being away from home? I think this Forest game is going to tell us a lot as well. Before we go on to the refereeing decisions, I do want to, well, a lot of people won't necessarily enjoy this section, I do want to analyse Armstrong's goal. Reason being is because it goes wrong in a lot of ways, and we're not going to dwell on it too much because sometimes goals are scored and actually it's a little bit of everyone's fault, and just trying to say this is where the goal went wrong is probably, well, definitely oversimplifying it. So we got the goal all the way from Salisu's pass into Aribo. And it's a great dummy from Aribo, but both Partey and Saliba have gone to engage and no one deals with it. That's the first problem. I think when you're going and you're committing, okay, you're not always going to win it, but you go to win it and they don't. Okay, fine. He lets it run to Perraud, and Perraud now is running, not at our back three, he's coming more inside with it, but he's dragged White out of position into more of a centre-back role, and he's just holding on to it enough for El Yunusi to then get it. Now at this point, White has basically become the centre-back now with Gabriel. Saliba's gone to the right-back to cover Aribo, who's running more towards the back post, but the whole midfield is running back. Armstrong, if I just take it back to the beginning of this goal, actually starts behind Xhaka, Saka, Partey. Now we go back to this moment. So Perraud rolls it into El Yunusi. Armstrong's running forward, and this is when he begins his run because El Yunusi is being delayed by Tomiyasu. So El Yunusi is kind of, he says he comes inside, and I think I saw a quote saying that he was actually planning on shooting, but he saw that Armstrong was such a good position that he had to roll it into him, and then this is where I think there's some blame. El Yunusi rolls it into Armstrong, and it's a finish past Ramsdale. Now, a couple of things. Do I think Ramsdale covered himself in glory? No, because he's not had to exactly find the corner. He's kind of just rolled it into an empty net. But I've never been a goalkeeper. I can't comment on whether he did anything wrong, or it just doesn't look great, but hard to discuss. Now, in this bit before, when El Yunusi plays the pass, I appreciate White's got an eye on Armstrong. He probably thinks if I go with Armstrong, he might be left in loads of space by himself. But I think he probably has to go with Armstrong. And I know I've stopped everyone there. It's a bit of a freeze frame by Armstrong's movement, but I think White's got to come with him. But it's not the first time that we've seen this bit of confusion in the Arsenal defence. And I bring us back to this Liverpool goal. This is at 2-1 up. We were dominating the game at this point. We were comfortable. And again, a pass into Jota. Firmino has run off Xhaka and Partey. I'm not blaming Xhaka or Partey. I'm not necessarily blaming the centre-backs. I'm actually going to open it to you guys and get Graham's take. But Jota gets the ball, one touch. Saliba steps forward. Gabriel doesn't get across quickly enough. Tries to, in fairness to him, unlike White, does try and get across to deal with it. But Firmino, it's a lovely finish. This time he actually really does pick out the corner. You can't blame Ramsdale. So it's a few times that this ball, in between fullback and centre-back, has now exploited Arsenal's defence in the last couple of weeks, and they've been able to just tuck it past Ramsdale. I hope that's not a trend that continues, but it's something we've now seen a couple of weeks, in the space of a couple of weeks, and maybe it's something Arsenal really need to address and decide, how we're going to deal with those situations. Does Saliba need to get engaged even higher? Does he maybe need to sit back and make sure that pass isn't on? Or does the centre-back have to cover? I don't know, but basically none of those things are happening.
Yeah, I think on the first of all on the Liverpool goal, I thought the gap between the centre halves was too wide.
Yeah.
We talk about the pass between the full-back and the centre half. I think the centre halves should be closer together. Mm-hmm. On the goal against Southampton yesterday, clearly for me, Ben White has to go with the runner. Look, it's so easy for us to look at it and say what should have happened.
I know.
Game is played at 100 miles an hour. Players, it's not. We talked about physical fatigue yesterday, maybe mental fatigue as well. Mm-hmm. So look, but we're just saying what in an ideal world should have happened. So
exactly.
It's something for Arsenal to look at. Teams are finding movements between our fullback and our centre back, and also sort of exploiting gaps in behind that maybe I think needs to be addressed. But when you play the type of football Arsenal play, when you sort of like look to be on the front foot, you're playing 2-3-5 or 3-2-5. Sometimes you're dominating the whole game. I have to say, had we taken our chances yesterday, we wouldn't even be debating this.
I know.
And there's always going to be moments in games when teams will make an opening. It's a bit like when we sort of like create an opening against the opposition, as good as say Liverpool or Man City or say Tottenham. We were still able to create openings against a good defending team. They are able to take advantage sometimes You've got to remember that was only their best open play sequence yesterday. They didn't cut through us very often, but it's a fair point you make, is that we've seen once or twice this season where we've been on the front foot, we've been caught out.
Yeah, I completely agree. Right, if you want a real discussion around referees, I'm going to point you towards the Bias Premier League show, because Robbie was not happy, nor were White Yardie and Ty. But we do have to touch on it very, very quickly. Jesus, penalty call for you? Penalty. For me too. I saw some ridiculous analysis. I'm not going to say where, I don't even want to promote it. People were talking about tangling of legs. I couldn't believe it. And it doesn't matter if it starts outside the box, inside. If you've got your arms around a striker as they're trying to get into the box and score, people saying that he's looking for it. Well, it doesn't. You don't have to. How do I put it? When there's I said this actually with Cecil and Kelechi yesterday on our way back. When there's like a contact, like foot to foot, you can kind of debate, did he get the ball, did he look for it, whatever. When there's arms around the chest, there's just no debate. Like, it should be one of the easiest things in football to try and analyse, and for referees and VAR to look at and go, yeah, arms around him, penalty, foul. They got it right at Stamford Bridge, they didn't here. I'm really annoyed.
I think he bottled it.
Yeah.
I seriously think he bottled it.
I think he bottled most decisions. That was a shocking
and
display.
I think his performance yesterday was not very good. But clearly, he had his hands all around Jesus, and he would have had to have sent him off. That because I think he was the last man, was he?
But I think double punishment in the penalty area.
Maybe, okay. But certainly, whether he should have sent him off or not, then take that back. Certainly was a pen for me. I thought his performance yesterday was almost like he allowed Southampton to be over physical, James. He penalised Saka in the first half when he was running at pace. It wasn't a dive, he booked him.
Shocking,
he booked our set-piece coach before he booked their right back, Lianco, who literally, amazingly, got away with so many fouls during the game. I thought he allowed them to be over physical. I know I came in this morning when they recorded the end of the Bias show. This referee, Rob Jones, has refereed 4 Southampton games now, and they haven't lost a game. Which is, I'm not saying he's biased in favour of Southampton, but that's just a fact. But I thought yesterday he allowed them to be over physical, and unfortunately, again, it looks like sour grapes because we didn't win the game. We're our own worst enemies, James. We had great chances to win that game, we didn't take them. But the refereeing, as much as last week we said it went in our favour, we have to say yesterday it didn't go in our favour, and it went in Southampton's favour.
Agree. I'm not one for conspiracies and all that.
I'm not either.
There's nothing to do with that. And
we just question the performance.
Well, and also we're consistent. Last week we talked about the decisions that went our way, and we highlight them as well. But we're still calling out the referees for their inconsistencies, whether they go in our favour or not in our favour. On the Lianco one, I think he could be sent off twice. I think the clenched fist in the back of Jesus, I think that's a red card. People might say, oh, it's barely anything, whatever. Hold on. If I've seen Pepe get red carded for this against Alioski, then you're setting a precedent that it's not about contact and actually how much harm you deal someone. It's about the movement, the intent. It's about the action, whether you hurt them or not. So, and that I think probably should be the rule. It should be about, there are just certain things you cannot do on a football pitch, no matter how serious it looks, no matter how painful, whatever. So I think he should be sent off for that. And I think the altercation with Eddie Nketiah easily, when he gets his hand up, that could have been a red. But I haven't actually seen that as much footage of that.
Just quickly on the Jesus penalty on non-pen. What did you think? Do you think VAR should have stepped in?
Yeah, I think VAR should have stepped in and said, you've got to look at this. He's got his arms all around him.
Yeah.
I mean, it is ruining the game. It is ruining the game. You know, the fact that we can come out of, when they're so obvious, and we're sitting there thinking, really, like, how have you not? And there have been countless. You know, the Cucurella hair pull. You know, how? Like, the technology we have, there's 4 or 5 people, including the ref, who are officiating these games, and they come to the most ridiculous conclusions. We're now getting to the points where we're getting written apologies and articles saying I was wrong. It's like, but we knew within 30 seconds you were wrong. How are we getting articles 24 hours later telling us you... Listen, I don't want to do much more on it because you're right, and we've dedicated 95% of this show to where it tactically went wrong and where we missed our chances.
Look, as poor as the referee was yesterday, we have to look at ourselves, and we missed lots of chances. We weren't ruthless enough. We were wasteful in front of goal. So in effect, you know, as bad as the referee was, we still had the opportunity to win the game yesterday and didn't take it.
Roundup stats. Let's finish them off.
Right, the roundup stats for this week, James. Arsenal have now won just 2 of their last 7 visits to St Mary's in all competition. won 2, drawn 2, lost 3. So it very much is
closed doors as well.
Yeah, it very much is a bogey ground. Arsenal haven't kept back-to-back clean sheets in the Premier League now since February. Do you know that?
Oh wow, no, I didn't know.
All 4 goals Arsenal have conceded away from home in the Premier League this season have come on the counter-attack. Arsenal have now scored more goals, 10, in the opening 30 minutes of matches than any other team in the Premier League this season. So we obviously start well.
Yeah.
Arsenal drew a game in the Premier League for the first time since the 0-0 at the Emirates Stadium on January the 23rd. In the 27 games before yesterday, in the previous league games since the Burnley game where they drew, Arsenal have won 20 and lost 7. Yeah. Arsenal's draw at St Mary's Stadium ended a run of 19 Premier League games when they have scored the opening goal and went on to win the game. So a sequence broken yesterday. Granit Xhaka now has 4 goals and 3 assists in 15 appearances in all competitions this season. As I said earlier, Xhaka waited 7 years for his first Arsenal goal on his right foot. His second came 3 days later. And finally, James, despite being held to a draw at St Mary's, let's look on the positive side. Arsenal stayed top of the table, 2 points clear of Man City after 11 games, and 8 points better off than they were after the same number of games last season.
There we go, guys. You're absolutely right. Focus on the positives. We dropped points and are still top of the league. And whether you're focusing on the title race, you're focusing on the top 4 race, it doesn't matter. We're all focused on Arsenal getting as many points as possible. But all things considered, 9 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat. That's a start I think we can all be very, very happy with. And it's Nottingham Forest on Sunday. That awaits. Of course, we'll be back with the Tactical Insight Show next Monday to break that game down. I believe I'll be there. Will you be there?
I'm at the game Sunday.
Cool. We'll both be at the game. So, guys, if you did enjoy this, do hit the like button. It really, really helps us out. And if you know, we know you guys are amazing in the comment section. Give us your thoughts. Of course, we'll be there. Apologies last week. I wasn't as much as in previous weeks, but we will be discussing it with you guys as well. Check out buys. Check out everything else that's coming out this week as we look ahead to the PSV away game and, of course, Nottingham Forest on the weekend. Let's bounce back, Arsenal. Come on.